Hi, this is Scott from phasingplayer.com, and this is the first time I have recorded an audio-only thing for the channel. Or, well, it's kind of true. I experimented a bit with some podcasts in the past, but those are, I think, all deleted right now. So this is effectively the first real thing that I put out. And it is an interview with Nate Hayden. Now, if you don't know Nate, he is a game designer and publisher. He publishes through Blast City and Emperors of Eternal Evil. He's designed quite a few things like Sea Evil, Psycho Raiders, Mushroom Eaters, but his most well-known is probably Cave Evil, a black metal-inspired hex encounter tactical wargame. Honestly, if you haven't seen Cave Evil, go ahead, go look at it right now. It's a very stark aesthetic. It is an incredible-looking game. And honestly, just about everything Nate has worked on is worth looking at, like literally using your eyeballs to observe, because they are very distinct aesthetics. And they're not all the same either, from Mushroom Eater's bright colors and disparate panels to Cave Evil's almost entirely black and white design, to Sea Evil or Psycho Raiders callback to like old stories and horror films. Definitely go to cave-evil.com and have a look at Nate's stuff, because it is very cool. Honestly, everything sold on that website is pretty darn cool. Now, we ended up talking for about 4 hours, and so I've opted to cut this into several installments. In this first part, we chit-chat a little bit in the beginning about horror movies and the COVID-19 crisis going on, and then move in to talk about his first two titles, San Quentin Kings and After Pablo. I hope you guys enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoyed chatting with Nate. Yeah, how's coronavirus life treating you?
Oh man, it's strange. There's parts I like, and then there's parts that suck, and just like going outside sucks. I don't know, just everything. Yeah, you just don't trust anything. It's weird. You have to go to these stores and I don't know. We'll see. But I think in the long run it'll be fine. But yeah, it's strange. I kind of like staying inside though, so that's not bad.
I hear you. Yeah,
How's it in Chicago?
kind of the same. I professionally I do like freelance video work, and so
Okay.
a chunk of my time anyway, a large chunk of my time is spent like editing at a computer, and
Uh,
so I'm kind of used to being indoors all day. And so my life hasn't changed all that much, but my wife is still working. She works for a university. And so she's still going into work, 5 days a week. And so we're being like extra cautious about disinfecting and what we're touching. And I feel a little paranoid sometimes, but I have to remind myself that it's better to be paranoid than not like safe enough. You know what I mean?
I agree. I kind of think the same way. Like the precautions that we're taking are probably helpful actually, and so being concerned and just cautious is good.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%.
I don't know. Like I can't even imagine what these Mardi Gras numbers are going to be.
God, yeah. Man, it's so crazy how like I don't know. I don't get too into a lot of like big spectacle stuff like Disney World or the Super Bowl and that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
it is wild how much of that stuff is being like canceled and stopped, and like 2020 like in terms of like American or even world pop culture is going to be just like a blank slate. Whoever edits the Wikipedia
Oh,
pages for that stuff is going to have the easiest time.
yeah. I've been going through different like what was happening in the arts in the Spanish flu, and then also in the plague, like the Black Plague, like what was going on with music, and it's strange. You don't even really hear a blip of change between pre music and the music after of the Black Plague, and then I just think what happens is everyone gets so wrapped up in it, but it's just this temporal nightmare, and then it goes away, and then you kind of just go back. But H.P. Lovecraft was writing stories during the Spanish flu. So I just think you just have to make do, and then kind of a nightmare, and then once it kind of simmers out, you just get back to normal. It seems like that's what's kind of what happened in some of the creative pasts, but I don't know what if you've had any other research. I don't know.
No, that's actually super interesting. I hadn't really thought about looking to see how major pandemics of the past have kind of reacted to that sort of thing.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah. Edgar Rice Burroughs was just, I don't know if he wrote these stories at the same time, but they were coming out at the time of the Spanish flu, as though there's nothing referencing the Spanish flu in any way. And it's just like another book in the series of Tarzan or something like that, you know? And I don't know. Yeah. So it's probably just this weird crap we have to go through every so often, you know, just kind of weird that our generations had to live through it. But
yeah, I think we get into these like bubbles sort of where we feel, and I'm sure every generation, every like era of mankind feels this way, but you feel so invincible. You know, you feel like you have everything under control. And man, we have computers and we have technology and we've been to space. Like we can figure out all this stuff, right? Nothing bad can happen to us. And then suddenly something like this comes around and you're like, oh, right, we're just like stupid organisms with dumb lizard brains.
I know. We've been up playing a couple times Origins by Phil Eklund.
Oh yeah,
and I love how like you go into the dark age. You know, like something will make you go into a dark age. I don't know if you've played that one, but yeah, like that's kind of this thing. Like the disease in that, I was noticing the mechanic is that you push your population up, so you're more vulnerable to go into a dark age. Right. And I could totally agree with that. I mean, it's like you said, you're in this bubble, and then all of a sudden, you know, a whole chunk of the population is at risk and might rip away, and that would thrust all these different things into kind of a disorder. But nonetheless, I mean, we'll still like if you just look back to the other ones, you just keep going on. You know, just some sort of order will assemble itself. You know, and continue to go on. But that's a fun game to play during this event, I think.
Yeah, I've been kind of looking for media and like art to consume that is sort of relevant to this sort of this time. You know, turning to some movies and turning to some games. Like I know I'm trying to think. Like my friend group. Obviously, we're not getting together right now to play games. So
yeah.
I'm trying to, like, I've been playing a lot more solo stuff than I normally play, and I've been playing more multi-handed games than normal too, almost treating them, and I know this is probably pretty common amongst wargamers, but treating them as like almost a science experiment, right, or like a sociological experiment. You know, playing a game not to look at the mechanisms so much, but more to see what kind of story emerges from the game.
I love playing that way, and I picked Callendale always does. He never plays like solitaire games. He always will play like 6-player, blah blah blah. And I started doing that, and it really is a story. It's like a story unfolds, and it's really fun. I love it.
No, yeah. Speaking of like Phil Eklund games, I've been doing that with the first edition of BIOS Megafauna, and American Megafauna.
I have that. Is it pretty? I haven't played it though. I have both the BIOS one and then the American Megafauna.
Okay.
Is there one you recommend over another?
Gosh, honestly, so which BIOS Megafauna do you have? It's Phil Eklund, so there are like 100 editions of everything.
Well, I have the American Megafauna, which is like kind of in this like really thin cardboard box, and then the BIOS one is I think it's got to be the first edition of the one with the wooden pieces, because I remember being really adamant about getting that when it came out.
Sure. Yeah. So those two are actually pretty similar. Like he iterated upon the design of American, but he kept a lot of the principles the same, and a lot of the mechanics are pretty similar too. For like a sit-down, multi-handed story sort of game, I think American Megafauna is kind of the top.
Okay.
It I think tells a better story because it's got a little more nuance in regards to the simulationist aspect of it. He tried to gamify things a little more with BIOS.
Okay.
But,
we put that on the table next. There's so many things I just want to play. This is one really good thing about this virus is like it just you just got nothing to do, so you play. You know.
Yes. Say what you will about a global pandemic, man, but you get some games played.
I know. Oh, that was what I was studying on the bubonic plague, because I was just curious about that, and people just they retreated, and just you didn't see them for a couple of years. You know, they just went away. They like just hunkered down and just didn't come out for a couple of years. And so I imagine that's sort of kind of our natural tactic that we're going to have to take. And I don't think it'll be a couple of years. Maybe it will, but I don't know.
God, who knows, man? We have like Trump saying he's like suggesting people go back to work now, and kind of experts all around the world saying, guys, this is going to last a little while. This might be like 2020 might be we all stayed indoors because there was a virus spreading all over.
I know, and it's the year of the rat. And
Oh, interesting.
the rat was like the bubonic plague, the cause of the bubonic plague. And I don't know. I have this friend of mine who she always tells me like about the Chinese New Year's and stuff, and that it's not the greatest of luck years. So I don't know. It's just it could be a while. I don't know. It seems like the other ones have lasted about 2 years. So
yeah, hopefully again, not to get too reliant on technology, but hopefully our ability to spread information to people like within, a blink of an eye will help, instruct people about, hey, if you stay indoors, don't go about your normal lives. Don't be close to people. Hopefully that will help snuff this out a little bit quicker.
I for some reason think that we can, through our technologies, make this go a little faster.
Yeah. Ideally, technology helps mankind, right?
Maybe we'll see. But I think it will, though. Just look how conscious we all became of it so fast, and then we're all taking kind of precautions. I doubt that was that fast in any other pandemic, but I definitely the Black Plague. They had no idea to even wash themselves. So yeah.
Yeah, just hopefully we get it together.
Hopefully we avoid the hospital slamming, and
yeah,
I think we avoid that. I think we'll just kind of ride the wave of it downward. So I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. But hey, man, thanks for getting on the horn with me tonight and chatting a little bit. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the questions. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I'm relatively new to you as a designer. I got introduced to your games with Sea Evil, and it's sort of I don't know if I ran into it like a brick wall or if it hit me like a brick wall, but one way or the other, it was one of those games, and a handful of games have done this to me. High Frontier, going back to Phil Eklund, is one. Food Chain Magnate from Splotter and Sea Evil are like 3 games that have sort of like burrowed into my head and just kind of sat there for weeks.
Well, that's cool. Cool.
So I've gotten a chance to play a bunch of your other games, and I'm happy to talk to you about kind of where they come from and how you feel about them, and because you've actually produced. When I went and looked at your catalog, you actually made or worked on. I don't want to say made, because I know a lot of the games you worked on with other people, so they're not strictly your designs.
They're I love collaborating, and there's a lot of collaboration in some of these, and some of them are just my own thing that I kind of just feel like doing, and so it started off just me, so I just was kind of tooling away, and then some friends we came up with the idea of Cave Evil, and then that kind of, we just have a nice chemistry, and so we just enjoy making things together and bouncing ideas off of each other, and so there's probably 2 different dimensions maybe. I when you play the games, my own games maybe, I don't know, they're just kind of might focus on a particular subject or something that I might just be curious about. Like World War III, for instance, I was just curious. I love thinking about war tactics in a sense, like what would happen if such and such happened, and that was just gave me an opportunity to think about that. Sure. And that might not, my buddies and stuff, they might not be so interested in those subject matters, and so just kind of, I like to do both, so it's good to have both.
For sure. And so you kind of publish under 2 banners, right? There's Blast City, which I think is what your first couple of games came out under strictly. Is that right? That's like your imprint?
Yeah.
And then you
Yep.
had Emperors of Eternal Evil is where stuff like Cave Evil and the horror game magazine stuff came from.
Yep. Exactly. I just whenever we're in a collaboration, if it's the same guys from Cave Evil or something, it's just always going to be Emperors of Eternal Evil. And if it's just me, it's going to just be Blast City.
Okay,
Um, I mean, maybe I don't know. Maybe I don't know if it's that strict or anything, but it seems kind of just natural.
sure.
Um,
I mean,
um,
the name Emperors of Eternal Evil is certainly evocative when you put it alongside stuff like Cave Evil and Psycho Raiders. There's certainly like a macabre sort of almost occult like similarity between those
yeah,
things.
that was actually the original name of Cave Evil, but
Oh,
it was
interesting.
just much of a name. Just so we had to make a kind of a tax business when we made that because we were handling kind of a little bit of money. And so we were like, well, I don't know, like, why don't we just name the business the name of the game? But then somewhere in there, we changed it to Cave Evil. The Cave Evil name story was kind of funny because Johan's a real computer guy, and he'll make these like kind of fun things sometime. And he made this name generator, and you would just throw any name into the generator, and it would like bleep out a name. And you would like cave or whatever, and evil and eternal and devil. I don't know, just whatever it would be. We just huck in different words, and it would just
It's
sort
funny.
these different name sentences. And in there, our friend Grux, who's Commode Minstrels and Bullface, who does the art, he said cave evil somewhere, but it was one word, just cavival or something like that. And we just kept going back to that, and one day selected that out of all the different names in the name generator. There were some good names, man. Into the Demon Path was one of the things that popped out of the generator.
That is a good one.
But yeah, there's a lot of neat things that uh, that happened. But initially, it was just Emperors of Eternal Evil. It just was too lengthy of a name, so we needed something snappier.
Well, I think it's a good imprint too for designers, right? Because like you are the emperors of Eternal Evil. You're the emperors are the ones putting out these games, right? It's like it. There's a little bit more of a connection to a person or people in that way.
Yeah, I think it works, but it's a trippy name to have in some sense. I mean, it's a deep. I really do study, and not in like in a satanic sense or anything like this, but I do try to figure out what is evil because it is an interesting philosophical question. And when you're naming yourself evil and you go to like try to get something printed or something, you got to go, what's the name of your company? It's Emperors of Eternal Evil. We've been turned away just by that name by some printers. We're like
Oh, holy
they're
cow!
religious and stuff. So it's I just want to learn more about what is evil. Like I don't know, just it's an interesting topic. And so then you say that you're the emperor of it. So what is that? And so yeah, it's just something to kind of meditate on, I guess. Just a curiosity, but I do like the name actually. I think if we talk like about spectrums of color or something like that, like one of the spectrums is dark and blackness, and so that what is that? And I think in some sense, to me, evil, you can begin to navigate. You can use a basis of kind of behavior or color or something like this as a way to navigate into different things. So I think in some sense, like focusing on evil is in a weird sense a good thing. Like it's letting you know that this exists, and so where do you go from this and stuff. This is just some of the adventure and just having that name that I just like to ponder. So but nonetheless, I do think it works as the name of a company. And when we're trying to deal with horror, we really are trying to go to like what is horror, like what is it, and why is it scary. And then you said you liked horror movies. I love horror movies as well, but there was like a phase in horror movies that I didn't like, and I didn't like I remember when they started making stuff like Dahmer and like Ted Bundy, and they started
Sure.
making these like real guys, and these guys are really horrible people, like they're horrible.
Right. They
And
actually hurt people.
I loved what I love is like horror in like a folk story spirit, like the Sleepy Hollow or Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees, where you know that it's a story, you know that it's a fiction, but it's like also an allegory for other things. Like Jason Voorhees could be this allegory for the people that are messing around having sex when they're too young. It's just, I love that stuff. But like real people that are killing people and they are entrapped in maybe an evil. That's not my interest in any sense. I like the story, the way that what is it about these stories that we love about horror and terror and stuff. So
there's a separation.
I love like Freddy Krueger was scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And but it was all fake. It's like this. It's like writing this, but it feels real. It's strange because that's what makes it work too. But it's writing this like there's a guy that can enter my dreams and kill me with razor knives, and he twists and turns in these dreams and becomes like a snake and all this stuff. And it's just I love that stuff. I mean, I don't know. It's just you go on forever about that. There's something so neat about that, or Lovecraft, or just the whole circle of the pulp writers of that era.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on all that stuff. It's there's absolutely a line between the real life horrors and real life macabre individuals and events, and then things that you can apply to your real life. Or with Freddy Krueger, like we all have dreams, we all experience that, but we're all also equally kind of in the dark about dreams. Like, what are dreams? Why am I dreaming about these things? And then you put this thing in your head that, like, what if dreams could be harmful? What if dreams could be damaging? Like, it's this unknown state or this vulnerable unknown thing that you're experiencing. And so Freddy Krueger, sort of represents your unconscious fears. But at the end of the day, he only represents them. Whereas Jeffrey Dahmer is a dude in Milwaukee who was literally, drilling people's brains. So, Freddy Krueger never hurt anyone. Jeffrey Dahmer did, and you don't want to glorify that. Because even like the Nightmare on Elm Street sequels, Freddy becomes like an anti-hero, right? He's like making jokes. He's like, he's funny. He's entertaining. He's engaging. In the later Friday the 13th, Jason is like a guy you're cheering for. Jason in part 8 uppercuts a guy's head off, and everyone cheers and laughs. No one's gonna cheer for Charles Manson,
Well, it is interesting because those in a like philosophical sense, you'd have to think about what are those people, and I've definitely gone through that phase of like true crime and in that and being fascinated in that. But I just in the end, I there's this like weird the storytelling aspect that I think is just important. I don't know that horror has a really good place or a purpose in a sense. Edgar Allan Poe and think of any author you can think of, they're serving a purpose in a sense, like it's a good practice to try to create these sorts of things, because you can be almost in a sense prepared for things in some sense, like at Last House on the Left will make you think about things, you're going to watch that movie and and you're going to think about, well, I don't trust people. Maybe I need to think about that or something. I love that. I just love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when they're fantastical, when there's like just more fantastical, then it's like giving you this metaphysical experience. It's really cool.
Yeah. Well, Nate, speaking of real world horrors and real world problems, your first game, San Quentin Kings, at least your first published game, if I'm right, is about like the prison system or prison life, maybe more than the prison system. And am I right in saying that was the first game that was like commercially sold in some capacity from you?
Yeah, it was a handmade game, and it was the first game I'd ever made, and I made it thanks to Keith Myers. He's a designer who ran in this class at a local community college, and I just went to his class, and he does like party games, and he taught me how to do play testing. And by the end of that class, you had to present a game, and that was the one I presented.
San Quentin Kings is a game where players play the leader of a gang in San Quentin prison. You collect resources, not like wood or stone like you may in other games, but contraband or stronger gang members. You use these resources to fight other gangs or bribe guards and otherwise get ahead. Whoever has the most respect, which is how the game tallies victory points, wins the game. Wow.
And
So
then
that was the first game, like full stop, that you put together?
yeah, and it was, and I didn't, to be honest, I didn't know anything of what I was doing. I considered it like being a freshman or a kindergartner or whatever. I was totally fine with making the entire experience a learning experience and just tumble through it. And from that, I did learn some things that I applied to the next game, and then you keep learning, you know. So, but yeah, that was all done in his class, and I think I put it into production after that class, and that's I have kind of skills in that sense of printing. I've always just been around printing and that kind of industry, so it was just natural for me to just make those on my own in a handmade style, and from there it just sort of tumbled into other games. But yeah, that was, I would say that my fascination with the prison system was as more of an economic fascination. I knew that there was that there was a way things worked in the prison, and so it just made me study what that was. And I happened to be my girlfriend at the time was living with this guy who'd just gotten out of prison. And one night he told me like he was in prison for like 10 years or something like this. And this actually was the creation of the game, really, is he just started to talk about what his experience was like, and like that he had a job, like he was in a gang and they gave him the job to make knives. And he just would keep going. And like, he would talk about how another guy would be muscle or whatever. He'd be like the tough guy. And, you know, he would just start talking about the different layers of different types of people within a gang. And you definitely got an idea that the highest value in the prison is respect. I mean, that's what everyone's trying to like make people not fuck with them, sort of. So they're always having to earn kind of like a brick wall. So you like, don't screw with me. And it'd be horrible to live that way, but it was nonetheless, it was such a weird divulging of how everything went on. I couldn't not do anything with it. It was like having a photograph or something. And so being in the class at exactly the same time he told me that, I just turned it into a play test. And oddly, I love Reiner Knizia, and I think I was kind of definitely in his kind of mood when I was making that. Just I love kind of the press your luck of Raw, and I think what I was thinking at the time was they're always playing with potentially solitary confinement. Like there's always the risk of solitary confinement, and that goes with getting caught. So that's a kind of a press your luck mechanic happening in reality. They're always pressing their luck. And the repercussion of the luck is you go to solitary confinement. So you begin to see the mechanics of things, and you're like, okay, well, all right, well, then you just sort of begin to see how these mechanics sort of can become game mechanics in some sense. And that was kind of the story of that. But I love the game. That's a fun game. I want to make it again. It's just a kind of a breezy, fun night kind of game.
Yeah, other than maybe the simpler game, the simpler aspect of Mayan Sun, it's probably your most straightforward game in terms of like the way mechanics and systems interact with each other. It plays pretty quick, but you're right, it is fun. It produces a lot of kind of exciting, laugh out loud moments in addition to like some kind of hard decisions that come up on occasion. And it is certainly looking back on your entire catalog, I think it stands out a lot as something that is pretty disparate from everything else you've done. And Yeah, you said you're considering like going back to it in some way, like republishing it or
I
reselling it.
would definitely like to put that out again. I mean, it's just a matter of time and being able to afford to do it. But it's just I just find it like kind of almost a light game, you know. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just uh, s- something fun to play with. Sometimes you'll have friends over and they have no desire to play a heavy game, you know, and I love heavy games. So, well, then what do we play? You know, it's always good to have the spectrum, you know, something a little bit lighter and they can have fun. And, you know, I think that game kind of fits that for my friends that don't really want to go into a deep area.
And you put out an expansion for it as well, Folsom Blood. What like, and it took you about 3 years to put that out too. From if I'm going off of Board Game Geek, San Quentin Kings was 2007.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably right. I don't, you know what made me make that? It was funny. It was like this one guy was a fan of San Quentin Kings, Will Frogmind, and I don't remember his last name at the top of my head. But he just talked to me one time and just was saying how much he liked San Quentin Kings, and I, you know, all of a sudden this expansion popped in my head, and I just said, I'm going to make you an expansion. And so like yeah, so I think that happened 3 years after. I'd kind of just forgotten about it, and then he was talking about it, and then an idea popped in my head, and I had to make it for Will. So,
Well,
yeah,
I'm sure Will appreciates it.
yeah. It was. I I just the base game I think works fine. I think that like if you add that in there, it begins. I would not show that to someone who's not into heavier gaming. You know, it's just already their brains are, you know, I can't go into that direction. So I think they're both good. If you have the brain, you'll be fine with San Quentin King's expansion. But if you don't game too much, San Quentin I think is fine as it is.
Yeah, and we were talking a little earlier about like horror figures, like the fictional and the reality, and then Folsom Blood adds in like Suge Knight and Charles Manson and Timothy Leary. Uh, did you have like any trepidation about adding real figures into a game, or was it just something that made sense to you as like it's San Quentin prison of course there are going to be notorious individuals there.
Yeah, I probably got that idea. I remember Timothy Leary talking about how he got placed in prison next to Charles Manson, and he thought it was like a real drag because he had to listen to Charles Manson all day. And, and Charles Manson would be asking Timothy Leary questions about getting high, or I can't remember how it was, but I just thought, well, you know, I mean, San Quentin and Folsom have these legendary dudes that pass through there, and that I would imagine that there's some sort of notoriety if you have these people on your side, or you know, brush shoulders with them. So it just kind of made me think that there would be some value in having these guys pass through the prison. So it probably wasn't deeper than that, but I think that was where that came from. Was Timothy Leary and complaining about Manson or something like that.
You know, you find inspiration in odd places sometimes.
Yeah.
I noticed in San Quentin Kings, the art for all the prisoners that you have and the guards and all that stuff, they were all white people. And I was curious if that was a cognizant decision or if that was just you did the art for it. I didn't know if it's just what came out. I didn't know if that was something you thought about.
That's a good question. Well, first of all, I didn't want to do. I'm not a good artist in drawing sense. But I had to do the art because nobody else was going to do it. So I did the art, and I did make a conscious thing. I was like, I'm not going to make this all black people or Mexican people because it's just that, you know, that they're. It's I don't know. I just thought it would be wrong in a sense in a sense to say, well, it's black people are only in prison or Latin people or whatever, you know. It just I don't know. For me, the most neutral was just this white guy. So that, you know, at that time, I don't think we were in such a time of like kind of thinking about things like this as so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just a matter of not focus. It wasn't, I didn't want to focus on race, but if it came out that we all focus on the race anyway, well, I can't do anything about it then. But
Sure.
it was a conscious effort to not focus on the race. I just wanted it to be, this is, you're going to just play these things and that's going to be it.
Gotcha.
I felt like for some reason it probably at the time, if I, being a white person, if I did draw, if it made a black guy, maybe I did feel at the time I would have been, like you're showing, that's, I don't know. It probably was at the time a conscious decision, but I was really trying to just say, it's just, don't even think about race. Just, it's, you're just in this thing, and you've got to earn respect.
Sure.
And
Sure.
the greater story is not the racial story in that game. I mean, the greater story of prison systems might definitely have a racial component to it, but in that game alone, it's just simply it's going to be this: you're in a gang. It's whatever gang you want it to be. But yeah, maybe now it does come off as strange.
Yeah, yeah. It was when I was because I bought the print and play off of Wargaming Vault, and I was putting it together, and as I was like cutting out all the cards, I'm sitting here thinking like, I'm curious. I'm not. This doesn't strike me maybe as odd, but I was interested if there was logic behind it. So
There actually was, and I didn't. But it was totally for on my part a move to not make it a game about race. It
sure.
was just about the prison system.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so after San Quentin Kings, not counting Will's specially made expansion, uh, this was like your biggest gap between releases. You put out San Quentin Kings in '07, and then you put out After Pablo in 2010, 3 years later. Um, what were you doing in that time in regards to game publishing? Were you working on other projects that just never saw the light of day in regards to board games, or did you really not try to return to gaming until?
No, what I think I did, if I have to remember, I think I actually tried to get into the business of game design and not be a publisher. And so I would send out designs, and I'd already had the Aztec game already done, and I was like trying to sell that, and I was trying to, I think, sell San Quentin Kings.
The Aztec game that Nate refers to is a game he ultimately did sell in 2012, and we'll talk about that later.
And so in that period, I was just trying that out, sending them off to publishers, trying to get some feedback and so on and so forth, and just trying to get into what that world is like. And that was thanks to Keith. And I have actually this unpublished game that I made for Keith, and I probably made that during that time too, which was a horse race game. And I think I was just trying to be a designer and not a publisher. But then somewhere in there, the ideas for the After Pablo came up.
As the name suggests, After Pablo is a game that takes place after Pablo Escobar dies in 1994. Players control cartels trying to traffic drugs into America to make money, while also vying for power and leadership back home. It is a much more economic game than San Quentin Kings, and the game is a much heavier game too, with more rules and more complexity.
And this was before, Breaking Bad and so on and so forth. I used to be a male stripper, and so like I would always work at these Latin clubs, and so I was always around, a lot of, like this cocaine world, and those sorts of these, just the dynamics and how that thing worked. I think I took on a complete edged basis, like I'm looking at like, why is someone getting killed for stealing $10,000 when the guys are making millions and millions of dollars? Like, why do they have to go kill somebody? Or like, why is there these questions of almost the very, very outside of the whole economy of just why are they having to kill these people in grotesque ways and chopping their heads off and just in fact it just was a curiosity, and so from that little hole, that little like doorway of that question, I started to go into like what the whole economics of that is, and that ended up making me probably want to publish it because I knew no one. I knew no, I was never going to be able to sell it. I was like, these people, they don't want like only 10 people in the world want these crime games, and like 50 million people want these like really these particular types of games, and I just knew that no one was. I didn't want to modify the theme in any way. I was like, I don't want to turn it into some thing, like that it's not. And so I just went out and I published that one. And I think that took about that amount of time to figure out that, what, I just like making these games and I'm just going to make them. And I'm going to learn how to publish. And so I think that took about 3 years to figure that out. But actually before that, I had already designed the Mayan game. And that Mayan game was purely designed because some publisher said, I think I sent them San Quentin Kings or something like that. And a publisher said, this is, we just are never going to put something like this out. We need like a family game. And so I had this book of the history of Mexico. And I just said to myself, I'm going to open that book and I'm going to flip a bunch of pages and I'm going to point down and that's going to be the game I'm going to make. And I flipped and it was about some paragraph about the calendar. And it was actually, I think I have the paragraph in the game somewhere. But I was like, that's it. All right, that's what I'm making. And we're making games about calendars. And
the most interesting theme in the world, calendars.
Well, it was weird. That was probably, again, like around 2007, I would bet, because like when a game goes through the play testing, so San Quentin was probably actually began in like 2005 or something like that. But yeah, so that was just I'm going to learn how to do a family game, and that's what came out.
Wow, interesting.
And that was a little bit before the 2012, and I just, no one ever purchased it. So by the time 2012 rolled around, I was like, I better put this out.
Yeah, man. It just seemed like the right time.
This is the year, and that other big game about the calendar did great. I can't remember the name of that game right now, but
Zolkin.
Zolkin, yeah, and that just blew what I did out of the water. But nonetheless, I had to put it out. I was like, I can't put this out in 2013. It just doesn't make any sense.
Of course.
So by the time I just put it out myself. So, but it was actually the second game that I designed.
Interesting. I did not know that. So when it comes to your, I guess, first 3 games, then I was going to call Cave Evil your third game, but when it comes to San Quentin Kings and sort of a prototypical Mayan Sun, and then after Pablo, these are all like either historical or like pseudo historical games, which you never really return to after that. Do you feel like history is, like at the time anyway, was a big motivator in you, or history or like the real world was a big motivator in your designs? Like, is that where you took most of your inspiration from?
I don't know. I like I said, I think things come as like a little doorway. Like the San Quentin Kings came from that guy talking about his prison life for one night, and just listening to his stories and how he had to, and it was kind of this doorway into that world. And then the Mayan Sun was just a paragraph in a book, and then the After Pablo was a curiosity of why does these cartels have to be so brutal? Like, why are they cutting heads off for some person that like blathered, and so I just want to learn about it. So I don't know if that's a historical thing. I think it's more, at the time, was just fascinated by the inner mechanics of why this happens, and it turns into maybe a historical thing.
Okay.
The Mayan Sun was just because I was like, well, if I have to make a family game, if the family games makes, if that's what designers got to do, I'll learn it. And so I think it was just by happenstance that it was historical. It wasn't necessarily a historical desire, but I do have there's certain histories I do really adore, and maybe if something just presented itself, I would definitely do them.
So, in After Pablo, I was looking a little bit at the forums for these games, and in After Pablo, You said at one point that you absolutely went out of your way to make a rule heavier game, and that is like After Pablo is certainly a heavier game than San Quentin Kings. Why did you want to make something that was a little more dense in terms of rule sets?
That's interesting because actually I don't even know why I said that. I didn't know that I had that at the time. Maybe I did have that at the time. Um, I just don't know. I don't. I just maybe it was a purely knowing what I started to like and just kind of just being honest about it. And I think that probably might have been it because I remember I think we all get introduced to these games and they probably come in maybe a little simpler fashion when we see like the first Euro that we play or whatever it is. And I still love those Euros that I play, like Chinatown and Traders of Genoa and um, I even love Settlers of Catan, but there was just these other games that I had in this scope, and I'm like, I want to go that direction, and I think it was maybe what I meant when I said that was like I just had to be honest with what I liked and wanted to, and what I liked is going to probably be just heavier.
Gotcha.
It's sort of like Phil Eklund, like he had to. I don't know if he ever made any conscious choice, but he definitely is not afraid that it's just going to be. There's going to be weird, wacky rules that you're going to have to learn, and it's not going to be catered. Unfortunately, certain people just won't be able to play it, and it just kind of sucks. But at the same time, I don't think Phil could be any other way.
Yeah, I hear you. Another thing you had said about the game, and I want to be clear. I'm not putting you on the bench here, and I'm saying, Mr. Hayden, you said in 2013 this thing.
Oh no, I don't. Yeah,
just trying to do some research for talking to you. I was kind of looking back on some of the older stuff about these games. You also suggested that you kind of knew that After Pablo might have some analysis paralysis issues. And you said you went out of your way not to make it a crime for it to have AP problems.
Yeah, man. Remember at that time, that was like a big thing, like analysis paralysis this, analysis paralysis that. And I think it was just probably commenting on the weather at the time, on BGG maybe. But I remember that time, and I remember like the solution was like these turns in games that lasted like 1 second or something, and that was considered a design like heroic or something, like just like whoever designed the game that had the 1 second turn is a brilliant genius. And I remember going, this is like eating like wafers, like I want a meal, man. I want to, if this means Jim across the table is going to take a long time, then I don't care, because if Jim's going to have a great time in his turn, then that's perfectly fine for me. And I just remember all the games I do like to play that do take a bit of time. And if they cut those down, I would be really, they would not be the games that I loved. And so I don't know. It was just, that was kind of this trend that was happening at the time. And I think I just remember going, if it has to be fast, and then by all means make it fast. But if we're making it fast just so we hurry up our lives, I just don't think that's going to be a great design choice. I think the game will just dictate what it has to be. I mean, I think you could have an argument that a guy has bad design quality, and in this design your brain breaks while you're doing a turn, and it takes whatever. But if the game demands a long turn, then I'm totally fine with that. I remember playing a game of playtesting Cave Evil, and Matt Brinkman, one of the designers, we just had little tabs of acid before the game, and we were playing the game, and he took an hour and a half for a turn. And Johan and I were playing it, and we were like off the table, going off and like drinking coffee or something, and we came back, and Matt was still doing his turn, and then at the end of the game, he won the game.
Well, that's the kicker. That's like the kicker with AP, right? The people with AP are the ones that win.
Yeah, I mean that's ridiculous. I mean, but nonetheless, it was just funny, and it was. I don't know. I don't really mind it. I don't know. It's hard to. there's something about a game if it just needs to be that way. And then a friend of mine, a wargaming friend of mine, him and I will just take forever on some turns when we play, just on whatever war game we're playing. And I think war games don't really care. I mean, it's just, if it has to be that way, it's going to be that way. And some of the turns in some games will be quite long. And I mean, a game itself will take weeks to play, and you have to keep it set up and everything, So
Sure,
it's
yeah.
shit. But nonetheless, if you're considering the market of things and you're considering selling, then yeah, these are terrible points. The market says don't do any of that stuff. But for me, if it has to be the way, I really do enjoy it.
Cool. And yeah, I would agree with you. I think that if you're really engaged and invested in a game, either mechanically or maybe even more so thematically, you taking the time and having someone's turn take a little while, that's not really something you think about, because you're usually, I mean, in many games, in many good, deep, heavy games, when someone else is taking their turn, no matter how long it takes, you probably have plenty to think about when it's not your turn. And yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I get embroiled. I don't know. Is probably the word I'd use. And I never usually think that it's bad, but I do. There are people. I'll say people. I don't know. That's not the game necessarily, but there are these like people that will be like this every turn. Or there's certain characteristics. They may not pay attention to anything that's going on in the game, and when the turn gets to them, all of a sudden they just like account for everything that's happened in the last round of play, and they start at the beginning of their counting. I mean, there are, I do agree that's maybe there are these things I would definitely agree to, but overall, if the game, if it just works, it doesn't matter to me.
So for After Pablo 2, you had mentioned at one point online that someone bought the rule set for the game to retheme it. Did that ever turn into anything? Do you recall maybe what it was going to become, if it's something you can talk about or not?
Gosh, what in the heck? I do not remember this.
Am I blindsiding you here?
I
think it was in 2011.
Oh gosh, there's friends of mine that have talked about it. I bet it was something with that, and I do not remember. I do remember a friend of mine who owns a publishing company was talking about how he could retheme these things and stuff, and maybe I was talking about that, but I do not remember what the theme was. I don't remember what the theme. I mean,
okay.
It may come back to me though.
So it wasn't like Fantasy Flight wanting to retheme it into Twilight Imperium after Twilight Imperium or anything.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I don't know. It was probably, I think, a guy just suggesting that he could do it or something.
Okay.
Told me a theme. I think what I said, if I do kind of remember, I said, yeah, if you can do it, I mean, do it, because my initial philosophy with putting out games was, I just want to make the first edition the way I want to make it. If anybody wants to do anything with these after it and turn it into some other weird thing, then go for it. And so that was kind of just, I didn't care if people wanted to do whatever they wanted to do after, as long as the first initial one was out. I was fine with whatever happened after. Because I think I was thinking Dirk Henn will do that stuff. Like, I think Alhambra was like something to do with the mafia or something like that, before Alhambra. Yeah, something strange.
With After Pablo and San Quentin Kings, both of these are available right now. At least they were like a week ago. I'm assuming it hasn't changed. They were available as print and plays on Wargaming Vault for purchase. How did that sort of come to be? How did you publish those as print and play games? And those are the only ones you've actually sold, as far as I know, as print and plays. You've made others available for free, but these two are for sale. What was kind of the origin of that?
Well, the guy who I don't know if he runs it, but he definitely puts things in there. Richard Kaiser, and he just asked if we could do that, we just would split the sales, and I said okay, please try this out, because I also The idea of print and play has always intrigued me because I like making things anyway, and I can see I can make things myself if I have to. So I would, if people want to do that, that's great to me. So I like the idea of print and play. But I think I ended that with I tried doing that with Mushroom Eaters, and it was such a complicated game to make in print and play. And same with Cave Evil. It would just be a nightmare to make in a print and play. So, but if I come up with ideas that are very simple, I will definitely offer them as print and play. If they are physically simple to make, I'll definitely offer them as print and play.
Yeah, I think Cave Evil would probably kill most commercial printers that you could, or consumer level printers that you could buy at home, because
yeah,
everything in that game is just like solid black.
Yeah, I would just, I don't know, I couldn't, I just wouldn't even encourage it.
Yeah.
But
Maybe if you took all those files and just inverted all the colors, so then they're all white.
Yeah, even our play tests, I won't even do the black in the play tests because it's just so much toner.
Yeah,
or whatever, or ink or whatever. It's just too much.
All right, well, that is going to wrap up this first part of my Nate Hayden interview. Keep an eye out for the next installment where we dive right into Nate's most popular game, Cave Evil, and discuss the possibility of a long-awaited reprint. And if you're not already, please subscribe to the channel. If you are listening to this on YouTube, I have a SoundCloud channel. And if you are listening to this on SoundCloud, I have a YouTube channel. Both are /phasingplayer, as is my Twitter account and Instagram. And if you are really enjoying what I've been doing here or on another channel, by all means, go to phasingplayer.com/donate and consider a donation. Any amount of money helps the channel out and makes me feel super good. It's much appreciated, regardless of the amount you donate, even if it's nothing. A subscription or a comment means a whole lot to me. So thank you very much again, and I will see you guys on episode 2.